setting a safe space, just it makes such a difference for us as HSPs, but for our clients, because there aren't a lot of places in the world we can do that. But that's what creates a difference in the world, is we're creating that by doing that ourselves, by being courageous and able to be transparent, and also providing that space for others, which we have those gifts. Those are some of our superpowers.
Inluminance specializes in developing sensory processing sensitivity, a natural high sensory intelligence present in 30% of the population, co-creating with the power of humanity to consciously evolve towards balance. This session features trained high sensory coaches, facilitators, and consultants who coach other high sensory people and partner with organizations globally. To contact them directly or to find out about our programs, please see the details in the description.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. We are so excited to be with you today. We are going to talk about a really popular subject. So today we're going to talk about how to get grounded when you're feeling overwhelmed, which we know we all do, and especially as HSPs can be a challenge for us. So I'm Stacy Ingram, and I'm with Cultivating Your Courage Coaching. And I am a mental toughness coach for youth athletes and performers. And typically it's middle school, high school, and college. And much like when we practice and we build our kind of muscle memory physically, we need to do the same thing mentally. And the mental piece of sports and performing is so big. So we work on things like performance anxiety, self-confidence, resilience and recovery, emotional regulation, things like that. And then next, I'm going to give it over to Bonnie.
Oh, thank you, Stacy. I just want to say what a gift it is to those individuals you're working with. That sounds wonderful. My name is Bonnie Snyder. I'm a life balance and intuitive coach. I partner mainly with highly sensitive women. I'm also an author and a diplomat in energy psychology. And I love partnering with women, especially those who are highly sensitive, to turn their high sensory gifts into superpowers. Because it's so important right now, I feel, that we really look at our gifts and turn them into those superpowers, honor them, and be really authentic and present and comfortable in our skins in the world. All right,
Thanks,
Cara.
All right. I'm Cara Menz, and I have a coaching called CaraMenz.com is my website. And I support burnt out women to shift into their power and find what truly lights them up with my EPIC approach, which is an acronym for eliminate, which could be unhealthy thoughts, unhealthy habits, participate, meaning showing up for our own lives, integrate healthy new things and fun things that we want to do, and then celebrating each of that. So with that approach, it really can help you kind of fine tune and find that true power that lights you up. So.
Absolutely. Very exciting. Well, I'll just start with a couple things. So we're going to be giving some different tips, different situations where we often are feeling overwhelmed as HSPs. And one of the things that I've run across is often during the day at work, if you're in an office and in a certain kinds of an environment, it can be very stressful. And how, as HSPs, do we give ourselves sort of the space and time we need? And one thing that works often is if we find ourselves with, some little 10-minute blocks that we try and put in throughout the day. And it can be very small things like, finding a place where you can just be by yourself, whether, it's in a conference room, whether it's in your car, whether it's, you can close the door to your office, depending on your situation. And just being able to either have a book that you can read for 10 minutes or do breathing exercises or meditation for 10 minutes. It just allows us to sort of calm that stress level down and that anxiety level down and then start again. So that's just one option if you're in an office and you're really looking for a little break here and there.
You reminded me, speaking about offices, I remember when I was working in the practice, my place was, because it's so hot here that Cara was never a great place during the summer, was the bathroom. I actually would just go sit. There were enough stalls, so I wasn't disturbing anybody, but it just gave me time to breathe again and to just visualize. Sometimes I'd feel ungrounded, just visualize those roots going down, just focus on my breathing, and I would feel much better. Now, I was fortunate. I did have an office. And the lights used to really bother me. Now, I know if you're in the bigger fish bowls, you can't do that. But I always brought in my own lamps. And then I didn't know why. I just didn't like the fluorescent lights. So that was a help. And then I think there's been some talk. We might have mentioned using noise canceling headsets too sometimes if you're in that big cube where there's just lower petitions, not walls.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to bring up the lights because that is such a big one for a lot of people and a lot of HSPs is the lights. I think there's some things you can put over, like if you do have fluorescent, like you can put little filters in your lights. I've seen people do that. Sound, like if it's very echoey and just loud sounds, I mean, pay attention to that stuff because sometimes we just are so busy with our days that we don't realize what truly is affecting us. So my point for all of this is start from the root and find out what is really overwhelming you at this point in your life. And this day, things change every day, right? I mean, the weather changes, the seasons are changing. I think that's a big one for us right now. The seasons, the time change. It's fall moving into winter right now in Minnesota, and time change is huge. It's getting dark now about 4, 5 o'clock. And that can be a big, so upping your vitamin D, upping your movement, and still getting out in nature. I've been trying to really still get out. It doesn't matter if it's dark, we can get a headlamp or something around here, but doing stuff like that, but trying to find out the root of what is going on and sitting and being calm. And, our group is so awesome here. We actually chatted before this because we all have our own things and, journaling and writing down things that are maybe not fitting in with you right now. Sometimes we keep doing the things we're doing and that becomes insanity if we're not empowered by it, if it doesn't bring you joy. And that's a hard, scary place to be, especially middle-aged, I think, for a lot of women and men. Do you need to make a shift? And that's, if it's scary, that can be even harder on you. But I think just put it down on paper and write down and see what that change might need to be and sit with it, right? And sit in that quiet and talk to people you trust. But I think you need to talk to yourself internally a little bit too.
And that's a really good point. I think sometimes too, we almost need a mantra that we can say to ourselves. And whether it's like, 2 or 3 little phrases that we're sort of repeating to ourselves, just like we would to a friend if they were in the same position, that, if they were feeling a certain way, what would we be saying, and how do we use that with ourselves and give ourselves that same care and same kindness that we would with someone else? I think as HSPs, we're perfectionists often. We want everything perfect. And that in our mind, we feel like, oh, if everything's perfect, then that stress will go away. And it often doesn't. So really trying to, as Cara said, find those pieces that help you put things on paper, help you kind of get some of that anxiety out of your body and on a piece of paper can really be beneficial. And I think the other thing you can do is if you're artistic at all, and frankly, even if you're not, you really don't have to be artistic at all to put paint on paper. And it has so much emotion based on the colors and those kinds of things. And it helps you get some of that anxiety out, but it also helps you think. It takes you from a left brain to a right brain scenario. So if you are thinking about making a change, like Cara mentioned, or you are thinking about doing something different in your life, it often allows those thoughts to come through, and it allows things that are more in your subconscious mind to come through when you're not so focused on the left brain and you're able to kind of get into that right brain space a little bit. It can be really helpful.
Well, it distracts you, which is what you want. You want to take it away from that. But a couple of things popped up as you were both talking. So when I really hurt my back, my chiropractor recommended after several months, I can't think it's the pain doctor, but it has to do with lower back. And so writing down, I do journal when I'm distressed, but writing down every day what they wanted you to do, I went on the app. He said, we were talking earlier how our emotions affect our physical bodies. So I noticed that my back would hurt more the more overwhelmed or stressed I was. So every day you needed to journal about what's your day, where's your stress level, and what, as you were saying, Stacy, your thoughts. And I'm like, I'm not going to write every day. So I did my voice record, and every day I voice record, and that worked for me as well. It's different. I think there's a lot to be said about handwriting. It works with the brain but if I wasn't going to do it, was better for me to do that. And it made a big difference. And then I was telling both Stacy and Cara before, I wrote a chapter in a book anthology that's launching on Wednesday, November 1st, called Life Shifts. And she said, write down your story, because this is all about a challenge, a time where there's pain or overwhelm. And being a highly sensitive person, of course, for me, I know it was magnified, but she said, voice it before you write it, which I did. And it was really helpful. And then I wrote. I actually had AI put it down, but then I really it was stream of consciousness. But I think that helps us. So thank you for bringing up the writing.
There's also something called morning pages, which you guys are probably familiar with, but where you take 2 or 3 pages and literally every morning you spend 15 minutes and you just write. It's just free form writing. It's to no one but yourself. But you're just getting everything out from, what I want to accomplish today to here's how I'm feeling about this. Your brain starts to wander in this direction and that direction, but that's okay, because you're really just acknowledging those thoughts, putting them down on a piece of paper, sort of starting the morning in a fresh space once you're finished, once you're done.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to make sense, right? Like journaling. People think journaling has to make sense and be all these senses and all this correct grammar, and it's not. It's about brain dump. I just am like, I need a brain dump, and it can go from one subject to the other because that's going on internally. So I think it's so important to get that out. And I love how you said, Bonnie, you found your way of doing that. Like finding the way that works for you, because we all aren't going to be fitting into this box that you all hear about, and truly remember that 80% of the world isn't like this HSP that we have going on. So what we see and what we're scrolling and seeing how modalities work for other people. And if we beat ourselves up against the wall, we're talking even marketing, like that's for me, like if it's not hitting with you, that means that there is a different way, but maybe we're not seeing it because of our, we're following this 80% of the world that's not like us. So I'm trying to find accounts and different people doing different things in their modalities. It's like, there is a different way that can work for you. Just know it's going to take time to figure that out. Note to self, but finding what brings you joy and different ways of marketing, and the social media thing can be very, very overwhelming for lots of people. But there's different ways to do that. So just know that deep down that you don't have to follow this 80% of what the world's pushing at you.
Well, you're talking about marketing and being, since this is an anthology, there's a lot of social media with it. And I don't do lots of social media, but I also have books. So I know that my gifting, which is mainly what I'm doing, the books that I have, is a way for me to influence without having to be posting all the time about it. Because if someone is touched by that, when you're talking to someone and it's face to face, many times we never know the impact. And I know with these stories that it will get passed on, and that's going to be my encouragement. So that's a way, again, a different way. I color outside the lines a lot for me of marketing.
I think as HSPs, a lot of us color outside the lines a lot. And as Cara mentioned, we're trying to find those pieces that work for us as that 20% versus the 80%. And it will be different for each of us. I think the other piece is, really staying grounded when we feel like we failed or we feel like we haven't accomplished what we hoped, is really looking at reframing that. And really, sometimes it's a lesson. Sometimes it's putting it in a humorous situation, because some things we just can't control. And so how do we either work through that path of acceptance, reframing, or humor to really think about what's going on and how do we move something forward? And, I think often we forget that most negative things that happen in our lives, there's gifts that go along with them, and we don't see them in the moment. But if you can really think back to some of the things that happened, like I'll give you a good example, and this is an extreme example, but my husband's brother, he lost his wife to leukemia, which is, of course, a horrible thing. But I can tell you, it made him so much better as a person, as a human being, how he interacts with others, how he thinks about life, and in his current marriage, it's a totally different marriage. And yes, it's a different person, but it also really created change in him that was positive. And again, that's an extreme example, but I think often we forget that, there are gifts in these negative things. And how do we look to try and find those? And that comes back to, you can put that in your morning pages or your journaling or any of the things we've talked about, even recording. And again, I know you won't find the gift in that very second, but eventually something will come through for you.
That's really interesting. Stacy, to take something that's so sad and painful, to be able to see the positive, and you're so right, it doesn't come in the instant. It's like the freedom afterwards. It's that hero's journey that we have to walk through. I was saying again before we were online that I was talking about my divorce, my first one. I was a therapist. I thought I had failed. Plus, family was so important to me. My children were so important to me. But yet I saw the change in all of us afterwards. And the man I'm married to now is much better to partner with me, in a marriage. So, but it was not like the death of someone, but in a way it is a death of a relationship. And I think as an HSP, took that in even more deeply. I failed. I couldn't do it right. I can help other people, but I can't solve my own problems. I mean, that was a big deal. And the therapist had to say to me, do not go looking in the haystack, for the needle. And that helped me a whole lot, step back, and the freedom afterwards. And we're good friends. So it just wasn't, we're very different. But during the time, there was a lot of pain. But that freedom, I just can't underscore that freedom we've all felt as we walk through a challenge. I'm sure you have too, Cara.
Yeah. I think, when you're talking about people, and that is another component of our overwhelm. It can be. Who are we surrounding ourselves with? Does there need to be a break from certain people, or what's missing? And sometimes we just can't give that to ourselves. So if you can find a support group or just somebody that you can become vulnerable with, that is a key in my coaching. Is I have people tell me things they've never told anybody before, and I can just even if it's over the phone on their, a free call, it's like you can just feel the big weight off of their shoulders, that they've been carrying something so deep and hard, and they feel like they're the only one that have been through something. And not to discount that people haven't had that happen, but just to get that off your chest is something I really recommend people to do, is to find somebody that you can become vulnerable with and tell something that in a safe space, just to get it off of your chest. If writing down isn't doing it to you, you might need a one-on-one person to do that with, and to connect with and feel that vulnerability, because that shame that we all feel about anything, there's no shame on the other side of vulnerability. And I think that that's important for HSPs too, to find that deeper connection, right? This let's talk about the weather thing doesn't work for me. And I'm okay saying that now, right? I'm okay. I can handle it for a while, but I know that I can't connect. I need deeper connections with people to feel a little more empowered myself. So take a note of that too.
Yeah. And I think you'll be surprised, honestly, how often when you're vulnerable, someone else will be that back to you. And it ends up helping both of you. And I know, like, I have a group of friends that literally are from high school. And even as close as we've always been, those worst parts of us, we didn't always share those. And I feel like we're all at a point in our lives now where we're willing to. And it's one of my very favorite things to do is to hang out with them, because I know if I have a heavy heart, or I know that I'm feeling a certain way about something, I can say it to them and know that they still love me anyway, or they still care about me anyway. And I think that most of us have someone in our lives that at least we can start that process with. And like I said, once you do it on your side, it makes it so much easier for the other person to do it back. And being vulnerable, it takes courage, it takes bravery to do it, but you will feel that release that Cara's talking about. You will feel so much better once you get it out of your body.
So true. It's so important to have a safe space. And as a HSP, we can start to figure out and tap into who we can trust. And it does take courage to begin with. But I know from my clients and my friends where setting a safe space, it makes such a difference for us as HSPs, but for our clients, because there aren't a lot of places in the world we can do that. But that's what creates a difference in the world, is we're creating that by doing that ourselves, by being courageous and able to be transparent, and also providing that space for others, which we have those gifts. Those are some of our superpowers.
They are. I think it's also really important environmentally, meaning our environment that we're in, whether it is an office, whether it's our homes, being sure that we have a space that feels like our space, that's a safe place for us when we need a break, when we need, a bit of quiet time, or honestly, just need to surround ourselves with things that give us a calming effect, make you happy. I think people discount how important that is, and how having a space for yourself is so important. And it doesn't have to be a huge space. It can be a corner of a room, or it can be somewhere that is small, but yet kind of takes your stress level down a little bit.
That reminds me of my office used to be a yellow color, it's just an off yellow. And I didn't like it being in here. And I was over triggered, I think. So painting a space can really, really make a difference. It's true. And your smells, for instance, I cannot be in a house that has scented garbage bags. It makes me instant migraine. So the kids were bringing stuff home and bags from college. I'm like, what is going on in this house? And it was all these scented bags that was triggering my headaches and my migraines. So really take note. And even certain hairsprays that my beautician uses, I would come home with migraines after every hair appointment. And I'm like, what is the cord connection here? And it was that. So it can be the minutest thing, but if you really try to just say, okay, when is this happening? Figure out all those things that are surrounding you. But Stacy, that's such a huge thing. Smells, colors, clutter.
Yeah. And I think as HSPs, we each have different pieces of that. Like you said, like smell is huge for you, where clutter might be huge for someone else, and like as an example, I love to decorate and do interior design. And there was a point in time where the little circle things that were metal were popular, that had spikes coming out of them everywhere. And every time I looked at one of those, I'm like, I can't put that in my house. It just gave me anxiety. I was like, why? But I don't know. I think we just do have to pay attention to those things around us, because to Kara's point, it can even affect you from a migraine perspective. I mean, so it's affecting your health in an outward way and an inward way, kind of at the same time. So making sure that we also are willing to voice those things and not just put them aside and say, oh, I'll just live with that. You really don't have to do that. And I think a lot of times people are afraid to say something like that. But you know what? If it bothers you, it bothers you. So I think it's very fair to be able to say that to your family or the people around you.
I so
And not
agree.
think that you're high maintenance, right? Like I always thought, if I bring this up, everybody's going to think I'm high maintenance. I'm just going to bear through it. I'm going to handle the noise. I'm going to handle this being cold or being too hot. It's like, no, if I'm paying for a nice dinner, I am going to make sure I'm in a right, it's okay. Like you're not high maintenance. And I think that can be connected sometime HSP. You think you're high maintenance, and that in itself will make you not mention that to yourself or to your spouse or to your friends. But it's your life. It's your life. So do it, because if you can enjoy life better with things that are a little more melding for you, it needs to change.
That's such an important point, Cara. I can't tell you how many times I have felt that. And even to my husband, and not saying something because I'm like, oh, it's just one more smell, light, something. But what you were just talking about, Stacy, my husband had swords from Spain. And I was like, so he's going to put them in his den, which I don't go into a whole lot, but I just didn't want that feng shui rise. So then I said, well, why don't you put them in the garage by your workbench? That didn't work for me either, because I pull my car up to them. So he has them in the closet in his room. And I felt badly, but he was actually fine about it. But it was that, am I being high maintenance? Am I being critical? But no, it was making me feel uneasy. And that's just and it made me think of violence also. So it's some of my sensing in, which brings me a little bit to the idea too. I think as highly sensitive people, we may not follow astrology very much, but just to be aware of, like we had 2 eclipses in this particular month, we might not be aware of what's going on in the collective. Either we know a lot has been going on in the outside world, but just to check in with ourselves, because sometimes our need to look at beauty or paint or whatever may not really be related to what we're experiencing personally, or it may be making what we're experiencing heavier for us. So just to be kind to ourselves. And just to be aware and take note of those things, as Cara had said, that give us joy. As Stacy said, painting, or I like to be creative.
Yeah, for sure. Well, as we wrap up, is there anything else that either of you want to mention as far as, tips go around overwhelm and feeling grounded? If not, that's okay too. But anything else?
I think a to-do list to put one thing, get it done. Don't like write so many things down that it just is defeating the minute you write it down. Be kind to yourself and just take that breather, because when's the last time you actually took a break and sat down for 10, 15 minutes just to breathe and just to be in your body? If it hasn't been for a while, it's something we should be doing every day, for sure. So
I agree. I think that's great, Karen. This little timer I got on Amazon is great. We can do it on our phone, but it's sort of fun because just taking, as you're saying, that's a big thing. That 5 minutes, that 10 minutes. For me, it's focusing on beauty. I can look outside. It might be winter time. The trees may be stark, but I still just appreciate that nature's there. So if beauty is appealing to you, that's a big one. And my list is very helpful. It helps me get it out of my head onto paper.
Yes, definitely. Well, thanks so much, both of you. And we'll just wrap up today, and we will see everyone next time.